Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Do you think you can tame the national debt? I have no idea. Do you think you could?
Actually, I am pretty good with money.
Okay,
I've always mainly been pretty responsible with money.
So the Washington Post has put out a quiz, and I did not cheat.
Oh, good. You didn't take it already?
I didn't take it already.
Okay.
And I actually have my laptop up at the same time, so I'm going to have us both answer separately.
Okay.
Because I think we'd get different answers versus doing it together. But, since everyone in Washington seems to think that the national debt is too big, we just can't agree what to do about it. They made this quiz basically asking different yes or no questions on what you would keep, what you would cut, and how would you raise and spend money if you ran the federal government? Would you fund universal preschool, lower the corporate rate, boost Social Security payments, yada, yada. So they made a game that lets us make decisions and shows you what kind of budgeter you are. So before we do that, just a quick update as far as debt ceiling negotiations, how they're going. Not great, Bob. Not great. Despite the appearance of some progress last week, the White House and Republicans remain far apart on an agreement to raise the debt ceiling or the debt limit. And they're meeting again today. So we'll see. But the main sticking point is government spending.
Yeah.
Republicans want a debt ceiling increase paired with a decrease in non-defense federal spending, including cuts to social services. You say something?
Haven't we given the Defense Department like billions and billions?
They have a lot of money.
Billions and billions and billions and billions and several other billions on top of that dollars just in the last couple of years.
And then they can't run an audit?
Right.
Yeah.
And they lose things.
Yeah.
Oops.
Democrats have accused Republicans of cynically pushing the U.S. to the financial brink to force through their cost-cutting agenda. Yesterday, Biden said the GOP's proposal would put food assistance at risk for nearly 1 million people, calling it extreme and unacceptable. The White House offered to freeze domestic and defense spending next year as a concession to Republicans, but they rejected that offer. The GOP wants more than a freeze. It wants a reduction in non-military spending.
And just a reminder that when Trump was in office, they raised the debt ceiling 3 times, no questions asked, and that 2017 tax cut for the wealthy added $7 trillion to the deficit. $7 trillion. That happened under Trump, a Republican.
Just a reminder. Okay, I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I don't think I can. All right, I'm not going to play with it live on air. All right, so we're going to play the game. So each card holds a policy decision, and I'll be dragging it to the right or left for us.
Okay.
As far as there's 19 of these, so we'll see if we can get through these in this segment. So first question: expand Medicare coverage costs $590 billion. And it would provide Medicare benefits for dental, vision, and hearing care. Yes or no?
I'm keeping it.
You're keeping it. Yep. I'm also keeping it.
Okay.
Oh, they're not in the same order. So we're just going to see what kind of budgeter you are, because
you can't do it.
It mixes up to do it as simultaneously. It mixes up the question, so It's not the same question at the same time.
Okay.
All right. Business tax: enact a Wall Street transactions tax, which raises $750 billion. Impose a 1% tax, a 0.01% tax
0.01
on trades of stocks, bonds, and derivatives. So this would be an extra tax on
trades. I can go for that.
All right.
0.01%. Okay, that seems teeny.
Yes. Environmental tax carbon emissions, raises $1.3 trillion. Enact a new $25 tax per ton of CO2 produced.
Sure.
All right.
I'm feeling spendy.
Social spending: cut Medicare benefits, saves $750 billion. Increases the premiums seniors have to pay for Medicare and raise the eligibility age from 65 to 67.
No. And I don't think a lot of senior citizens want to see that happen either.
No, they probably don't. All right. Business tax. Enact a national consumption tax. Raises $3 trillion. Adopt a 5% national consumption tax on goods at each stage of their production.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I worry about small business.
Okay. Children in education. Universal pre-K and expanded childcare costs $970 billion. Dramatically expand childcare up to age 2 and offer pre-K for all 3 and 4-year-olds.
Yes.
Pretty much so far we're on the same.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that you've answered anything that I would be different anyway.
Okay, well, that's good.
Social spending. Enact House GOP debt ceiling bill. Saves $4.8 trillion. Slash spending on domestic programs over the next decade.
No.
No. All right.
No.
Social spending. Expand Social Security for low-income seniors. Costs $400 billion. It increases the size of benefits and grows payments at a faster rate.
For right now, I would say no.
Okay. Business tax. Lower the corporate tax rate.
No.
Would cost $1.1 trillion.
No.
Decreases from 21% to 14%.
Yet.
All right. Cut Medicaid benefits.
No.
Say $667 billion. Cut federal reimbursement rates for providers who treat patients covered by Medicaid.
No.
Business tax. Raise the corporate tax rate. This raises $1.1 trillion, and it increases it from 21% to 28%.
Does that cover like every LLC? Anyone who's a corporation would see a 28% increase?
I don't know. More info. What does it say? Raise the corporate. Proponents say large corporations could afford to pay more in taxes, while critics say raising the tax would stifle economic growth and innovation. It does not say what limitations there are on the size of the company.
Well, it did say large corporations. And considering that CEOs of large corporations right now are averaging, I believe it's about 1,300% more in salary than their lowest paid worker, I would say yes.
Okay. Personal tax. Enact a wealth tax. Raises $2.2 trillion. Impose a tax on wealth for multimillionaires and billionaires.
Yes. Sorry, you're going to have to wait for that 4th chalet in Switzerland. I know it's crushing. I know you're struggling, but you can make it.
Foreign affairs / foreign aid saves $148 billion. Reduce spending on international affairs outside the military by 25%.
It's a global economy. We have to have allies.
Okay, so you're saying don't slash it.
No.
Personal tax. Eliminate the estate tax. It would cost us $372 billion. Repeal the tax on estates worth more than $12 million.
No.
Okay. Social spending. Cut Social Security benefits.
No.
Did anybody already answer this? Save 100. Reduce the amount. Okay. Children education. Enact Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. Costs $400 billion. Cancel up to $20,000 in student debt for most borrowers.
20,000 would be the cap.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Get 2 more. Children in education. Tuition-free public college costs $700 billion. Provide free college tuition at community colleges and public 4-year universities and universities.
I don't think that's feasible. I'll say no.
All right. Cut defense spending. Saves $995 billion. Cut projected military spending by 13% over the next decade.
I think the military has enough money. And if they can't budget with the billions and billions and billions of dollars that they have, then they need some remedial mathematical courses.
Okay. So that's a yes.
Yes.
Personal tax. Extend some of Trump's tax cuts. Cost $1.4 trillion. Extend the 2016 tax cuts that benefited Americans earning less than $400,000.
Read that one again.
Extend some Trump tax cuts. Costs $1.4 trillion. Extend the 2017 tax cuts that benefited Americans earning less than $400,000.
Yes.
So extend them?
Extend them.
Okay. You're a diligent deficit hawk.
Oh, look at that.
Your top priority is getting our fiscal house in order. Unlike the big tax and spender or your arch nemesis, the money printing maverick, you believe that the national debt is the foremost crisis. This is a really funny different version of a cosmopolitan quiz. This is like a policy nerd quiz versus like, what kind of data are you?
We should send this to the Wisconsin Policy Forum and have them analyze this.
We should have them be. I just thought of that. I'm just like the quizzes we took in Cosmo. And then it gives you some kind of like quippy title. This is a little different. You are skeptical the federal government should expand social programs, but you also believe it in higher taxes to ensure that the debt doesn't get out of control. Any small increases in spending you support need to be offset with new taxes. And your policy choices would cut $3 trillion from the debt over the next decade. That is 5% of the projected figure. So there you go.
I think that's a reasonable outcome.
Yeah. But that's a really fun little quiz you can go do. And I think it's, again, reading those numbers off.
Can't even wrap your head around it.
It's like, what is 1.1 trillion versus 400 billion? And it's a huge, huge difference. But just like, I feel like the money needs to come with bar graphs to start to actually visualize when you think of those like incomprehensible numbers.
Yeah.
How much one thing is versus this other very expensive thing.
Yeah. We'll use M&Ms or something.
Because just reading them off in those questions, it's like they just start to sound the same.
It's so much money.
It's so much money.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're a Succession fan, you may know that Milwaukee has been part of the plot line for this final season of that hit show. And Ann Jacobs actually did an interview with WISN on part of that plot line and what would actually happen in real life if that storyline were to happen in Milwaukee. So stay tuned. We will play that and talk about it when we come back. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
But it can help us achieve all the dreams we want, like this microphone that we're recording on.
We're all familiar with the 3 whats. What is it? What can it do for me? And what does it cost? At Country Financial, we can help you find the answers with insurance coverage to help protect what's most important to you, all at a price you can afford. So while you're juggling work and kids while trying to keep an eye on your future, we'll make sure we're one of the first ones there when you need us most. What should you do next? Call Matthew Holbrook, your Country Financial representative at 414-332-2137 and chat about your insurance needs today. 414-332-2137.
This is the story of a very special woman. Just a few knew about her superpowers. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Direct from the Dairy State, it's Sharp Cheddar Weekends, a 3-hour block of Wisconsin-produced radio, Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m., featuring Raised in Wisco with Joel Clayfish and Danielle Fairman, The Cripes Cast with Charlie Behrens, and Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown. You can enjoy it by the slice or enjoy the whole darn thing. Sharp Cheddar Weekends is radio so fresh, it squeaks. Listen in on the Civic Media Station or on the app.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Partly cloudy skies this afternoon with highs around 79. Southeasterly winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Partly cloudy skies again tonight, lows around 52. High temperatures reach up to 82. Tomorrow, sunshine mixed with clouds at times. Dry with temps well below average Wednesday and Thursday, and highs in the low 60s. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 73 degrees.
Welcome back. This is Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin.
That's-
This is Kristen Bry.
That's what this is.
She is Jane Nair. And you don't watch Succession, right?
I've watched a couple of them. They're all so unlikable. I want them all to fail.
Yeah. But part of the show is watching them
Yeah.
go up and down and fail.
Yeah,
and
but some of them are going to skate away just fine and nothing will happen to them.
yeah. Well, it's some of the best writing and acting. It is really good. I agree with you that it's just all of them are awful people. And it also just makes me watching that show makes me think of how realistic in those powerful circles of politics and media and tech and because Kara Swisher does the official Succession podcast, and she is arguably the most influential big tech journalist in the country. She asks the best questions. She is kind of on again, off again with Zuckerberg or Elon and how much they want to talk to her, and super smart. And so it's interesting when you listen to the podcast when she recaps the shows and goes, so it's a combination of interviewing either some of the crew, creator, showrunner, cast, but then they also interview a real life person about a situation that happened in Succession.
Oh, fascinating.
So this season there is a very potential merger happening, and she interviewed a past CEO of Twitter, but he's done a bunch of different things and talking about how these mergers typically go. It's a great podcast, but it's also in that one specifically talking about the egos and how much of the show is relatable to people in those spheres. And it's almost like how the show Silicon Valley, which I certainly recognize some of my experience in, but that same CEO, he consulted on that show, which was a comedy. And there was things that he did not give the writers team that they just came up with organically, that then he would get texts from people being like, I can't believe you told them that.
Oh, wow. I didn't tell him.
And so I always think about that when I watch this show of who would actually want to live in this world? And yes, there's so much money at stake. There's a lot of power at stake, but just being surrounded by awful people all the time.
And you have to fake it. I know.
Ugh. Anyways, so in the last 2 weeks, Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the Wild has made an appearance in this very, very popular show because they are in a fictional election, a fictional presidential election has happened. And it comes down to a fire at the central count in Milwaukee, where 100,000 votes get burned, get destroyed. And so ATN, which is basically Fox News in this world, calls it for the super scary right-wing candidate. And now in the show, they're going through all of the legal ramifications of that. So obviously, I think people had mixed feelings because we're still a little scathed by the election was stolen in 2020 and Milwaukee and all of
the
that.
election deniers.
But WISN interviewed Ann Jacobs, who is a member of the Wisconsin Elections Committee, and just to talk a little bit more. But let's play a little bit of it.
All right, here's the first clip.
So if it happened in Milwaukee and if it's deliberate, then it's mankiness, no?
False flag could be.
You can't just say false flag.
In 1960, in year 2000 and 2016, these unbelievably close election moments kind of keep on coming in the US. So it felt legitimate to have another one.
That was the showrunner. This is a clip from Ann Jacobs talking about what would happen if this scenario happened in the real world.
I thought that the show writers did a very good job of getting a lot of the details about how Wisconsin elections work and how central count here in Milwaukee would work. The one thing that I thought they didn't quite get right is in the show, they said that they couldn't know who had successfully mailed in or submitted their absentee ballots. And that's just not quite true. Here in Wisconsin, our clerks, like the City of Milwaukee clerk, are able to scan in the barcodes of all the absentee ballot envelopes that are received. And they do that, and then it immediately goes into the computer system, the statewide computer system. So we know whose ballots have arrived pretty quickly after they come in. So that was one thing they got wrong. And it sort of plays into their plot, which is we have no idea whose ballots they are. We really would know whose ballots had burned up.
So that was kind of the big difference as far as there is tracking.
Yes.
And actually, as a reminder for anyone who has ever voted absentee, you can go on myvote.wi.gov and watch your vote get counted. Once you mail it back in, you can actually go on that site and it checks it off as far as we have received your ballot.
Yep.
But then what was also interesting is because now the major plot point of the show is what happens. And truly, I didn't know. I didn't know if some kind of accident happened in Wisconsin where 15,000, 20,000 votes can make the difference. If something happened where 100,000 votes were destroyed, what would actually happen? So she answered that as well.
Terrific question, and everybody's asking it. And the reason nobody's answering it is really nobody knows. We would have court case after court case. We would be in state court. We would be in federal court. My suspicion is we would wind up with some sort of amended deadline for resubmitting ballots or allowing people to vote. That certainly would be my hope, because if this were to happen, what you wouldn't want to see is 100,000 people completely disenfranchised. I think that would be the worst possible outcome. But do we know? Nobody knows, and I hope we never find out.
Me too.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people with you on that one, Em.
I'm hoping that episode didn't spark any ideas. So, all right. Well, when we come back, State Senator Mellisa Agard will be here to talk about her grassroots tour and maybe ask a couple other questions about what's happening at the Capitol. So stay tuned. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
From As Goes Wisconsin to Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown. This is The Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM, WAUK.
CBS News brief. A judge has just entered a not guilty plea for Brian Koberger, the man charged in the deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. CBS's Jared Hill.
Legal analysts say despite the strong evidence for the prosecution, there's no clear motive. Also, no actual murder weapon was found at the scene, potentially strengthening any defense.
House Speaker McCarthy pushing budget cuts. Later today, he meets with President Biden on lifting the debt ceiling.
The underlying issue here is the Democrats, since they took the majority, has been addicted to spending, and that's going to stop. We're going to spend less than we spent last year.
South Dakota Republican Senator John Thune speaks up for South Carolina's Tim Scott, who's running for president.
Tim Scott is the real deal. And he will make a great president of the United States.
CBS News. I'm Steve Hathan.
News brought to you by Gingras, Thompson & Watts, your personal injury attorneys dedicated to helping you get the justice you deserve. GTWlawyers.com. They're all in to win.
For Civic Media News, I'm Terry Bell. Here's what you need to know. 1 person is dead after a rash of weekend violence in Milwaukee. 10 other people were wounded, including 3 teenagers. Milwaukee police arrested a couple of suspects. Republicans in Washington are pushing for spending cuts in exchange for helping raise the nation's debt ceiling. Senator Ron Johnson tells Upfront on Channel 12 in Milwaukee the prospect of going into default June 1st is a phony crisis.
We have more than enough revenue coming in to pay for our debt servicing, Social Security, probably Medicare. Now, some of these agencies might have to shut down temporarily, but there's no need for a crisis whatsoever.
On the other hand, Democrat Tammy Baldwin says default would lead to interest rate hikes and cuts to crucial programs. In sports, the Red Hot Astros bring their 7-game winning streak to Milwaukee tonight. I'm Terry Bell, and this is Civic Media News.
Accidents can be life-changing, no matter how careful you are. But with Gingras Thompson and Wachs, you're not alone. For decades, they've been fighting for the rights of people just like you. They'll let you focus on your recovery while they handle the legal complexities. If you or a loved one has been hurt or killed due to someone else's negligence, contact them now. You may deserve compensation.
All into it, Gingras Thompson and Wachs, GTWLawyers.com.
Feeling down, anxious, depressed? You are not alone. According to the World Health Organization, approximately 280 million people have depression, but the majority never receive treatment. At WellPoint Care Network, they can help. Their outpatient clinic staff are both qualified and caring, not to mention highly trained in partnering with you on your healing journey. Make an appointment today at wellpointcare.org. They serve all ages, infants, children, and adults. Both in-person and virtual services are available. Learn more at wellpointcare.org.
Let Mike Crivello's Camera Center help you start your family photo album by turning your digital images into gorgeous 4x6-inch prints on 2 for Tuesday. Buy one print, get the second free, up to 100 prints. In-store only at 181st and Blue Mound.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress? But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Mednair, and we are going to be talking about why prohibition doesn't work with probably, I don't know if you would call yourself this, but I would say one of the biggest advocates for legalizing weed in Wisconsin, at least at the Capitol, State Senator of the 16th District, Senator Mellisa Agard, who is also the Senate Democratic leader, is back. Welcome back to the show, Senator.
It's really nice to see you.
So, on 420, you know, that notorious holiday, you launched your grassroots tour, roots spelled as in the roots that you take on a road, to push for legalization of marijuana in Wisconsin. So what has been the goal of that tour?
So we have already visited 3 communities in Wisconsin. We were in Green Bay. We were in Platteville, and we were in Wauwatosa, and it is really clear that people in Wisconsin are completely frustrated by the lack of action by my Republican colleagues here in Madison. Folks know that Wisconsin will be safer, that we will have more prosperity, and that our personal liberties would actually be protected with the legalization of cannabis. Close to 2/3 of the people in Wisconsin support responsible adult usage. And we also know that, and this was before Minnesota boldly legalized weed on Friday, that even before that happened, that adults over the age of 21, over 50% of them live within 75 minutes of a legal weed dispensary. And people in Wisconsin are taking advantage of those legal weed dispensaries. You go to them, the parking lots are full of Wisconsin's cars. So clearly, people are taking time out of their valuable days and spending their valuable and hard-earned dollars to travel to other communities to buy legally regulated cannabis in those communities and bringing it back to Wisconsin, where they may face very harsh penalties because of the laws that are in the books here. It's not a matter of if this is going to happen, it's a matter of when. And I very much believe that we should have a homegrown Wisconsin solution to prohibition, as opposed to a solution that would come from the federal government. But as the days tick by, it's seeming more and more like it's going to be up to the federal government to get us across the finish line on this. But I'm going to give it the good old Wisconsin try. I'm going to keep working on this because I know that my friends and neighbors all across Wisconsin are asking for us to change our laws, and that prohibition did not work with alcohol or margarine. It's certainly not working with cannabis.
I do love that whenever we talk about this, everyone knows prohibition of alcohol. and all of that. I feel like it's still less known that Wisconsin tried to forbid margarine for a long, and that margarine was made. Was it in pink for a while?
They would, in certain states, they dyed it different colors, right? So,
Yep.
in some states it was pink, in other states it was white, and you could get a little yellow dye packet to stir into the oleo or margarine in order to turn it yellow. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was.
They did
didn't work.
oleo runs.
Yeah,
Oleo
it was
runs.
oleo runs,
Yeah.
and so it's so funny because I think about it now as far as the war, like the milk wars that are happening versus the plant juice versus the
milk versus juice.
Yeah.
But back to the subject at hand. So I guess, as you said, this feels so frustrating because despite I feel like every time there is a Marquette poll, the percentage of people in Wisconsin who want this goes ticks up, ticks up, ticks up, ticks up. And I guess first question, in your 3 out of 4 stops that you've had so far, when you talk to constituents, do you run into constituents who don't want this and who do talk about what their concerns are?
So certainly I look forward to those conversations because I think if we know where people's pressure points are, what makes them uncomfortable or worried, that good law, frankly, addresses those concerns. And we have had, I would say, the vast majority of people that have shown up are scratching their heads and saying, what's the hang up? And we have had a few people that have come in and have been worried about our kids. As a mom of 4, I worry about our kids too. I think that everyone in Wisconsin, that is a priority. That's something that we define ourselves as people who care about our kids and our future. But prohibition does not make us more safe. It doesn't make our communities safer, and it doesn't make our kids safer. We know that with legalization, you can actually, in regulation, you can actually have factual, science-based conversations with young people about brain development, the importance to eat healthy food and drink lots of water and exercise and put your cell phones down and don't smoke pot. But if we're not talking about it, all these young people across Wisconsin, they can gain access to weed on the illicit market in the state of Wisconsin very easily. And with the data from other states that have legalized, we're able to see that youth usage does not increase, and in many cases actually decreases or stays status quo. We're not introducing a new substance to the state of Wisconsin or to our kids. It's a robust industry. It just happens to be an illicit industry. So primarily the answer, to stick my landing, to answer your question, most people are confused about why it is that we're not moving forward if the majority of the people want this to happen. And the people that do come with a little bit of skepticism, I very much want to hear them and believe that we can address their concerns with responsible legislation.
Our guest is State Senator of the 16th District, Mellisa Agard, who launched her grassroots tour pushing for the legalization of marijuana in Wisconsin on 420. Senator Agard, in the past, I've talked to veterans who really, really want to use medical marijuana because they are having so many bad reactions from pharmaceuticals that they have been prescribed, and they're not getting the results or the relief from pharmaceuticals that they do get from marijuana. I can't imagine the frustration for that particular group that this is just falling on deaf ears.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, with a responsible adult usage policy that has a medicinal component, which is a bill that I've championed in Wisconsin for over a decade now, we don't need to pick winners and losers. Certainly, our veterans, people who suffer from chronic illness, people who are debilitatingly ill would be able to have access to a plant that does provide them with real relief. We also know that we would be able to address impaired driving, youth usage. We know that our main streets would flourish. Farmers in Wisconsin are clamoring to be able to engage in this new industry. We would be able to make impact, a positive impact on our egregious racial disparities in the state of Wisconsin. We have the worst racial disparities in Wisconsin. Certainly, legalizing pot isn't going to address it all, but it'll make a big difference because Black and brown folks in Wisconsin are between 4 and 7 times more likely to be arrested for simple possession than white people, despite similar usage. And then you add on to that our personal liberties, our freedom. Using cannabis is not going to do harm to other people in our communities. And we, as responsible adults, should be able to make those decisions for ourselves. So, yes, those veterans, those stories, they are heartbreaking. I have heard many of them. And, you know, folks don't want to lose access to their ability to have public benefits or to have housing or school scholarships or the Second Amendment. And with prohibition of cannabis in the state of Wisconsin, all that is on the line if someone is popped for having access to this plant in our state.
And so, and because in most of our bigger cities, Milwaukee, Madison, I think Stevens Point has even passed this, and a lot of the bigger parts of Wisconsin, it's fairly decriminalized, right? And so when you say that the harsh laws, like there's a huge discrepancy of if you are caught with possession of marijuana, what could happen to you depending on where in the state you are, correct?
Absolutely. So that's the one thing that local governments can do when it comes to cannabis policy is they can decriminalize it at the local level by making the fines less and less. So, for example, in the city of Madison, the fine for possession of small quantities of marijuana is $1. In other communities, it may be $100. But that is for possession. You know, it is vitally important that we support our local governments. Local control is super important to me as someone who came from the county board. But we have had legislators introduce a number of different policies over the years when it comes to cannabis. And one of them was a decriminalization policy that would have actually increased penalties in communities like Madison, Milwaukee, Eau Claire, Monona. The list goes on and on. Where the fines would be in the hundreds of dollars as opposed to the work that was done on those local levels. So the devil's in the details with all policymaking. And I do think that the fact that local governments are looking at decriminalization, one of the only tools they have in their toolbox, we should not be taking that tool away from them. But we should also, as the state legislature, be following their lead, listening to the people of Wisconsin. And Kristen, as you pointed out, the number of people that are actually prohibitionists in the state of Wisconsin is pretty slim. You know, the data on a national level is a little bit more available to us than at the state level, but it's looking at like less than 10% of the people in our nation believe that cannabis prohibition is a good idea. Even in Wisconsin, the majority of Republicans now support responsible adult usage and certainly medicinal policies as well. So, you know, once again, the will of the people should be the law of the land. There's a laundry list of these policies. No one is unfortunate. You know, it's not that people are picking on just cannabis policy. There's a long list of policies that are not moving forward in Madison because of partisanship in the legislature and the inability of the Republican Party to hear what it is that the people of Wisconsin actually want.
Well, and speaking of that, Senator, I'm curious in some of the stops that you've made, I assume some constituents have tried to reach their lawmakers, and I'm curious what kind of response they're getting back from them, if they respond at all.
Yeah, so when I go into a community, I welcome members of the legislature, even if they're from the other side of the party, to join me. So far, my Democratic colleagues have welcomed those invitations and have joined me at the grassroots tour stops. I haven't had any Republicans do that. I'm looking forward to this Thursday being in Eau Claire, and then next Thursday I'll be in Wausau. We have 2 more stops before I'm going to have to slow down on this tour and roll up my sleeves and be present in Madison for the budget deliberations. But the response has been overwhelming. People want us to continue. I hear their voices, and I will be embarking on round 2 of the grassroots tour later this summer, and look forward to hearing from folks. Maybe some of your listeners have ideas on where it is they would like me to stop, because certainly we're not having public hearings in the Capitol on this issue, and hearing these stories, whether it's from the veterans or from the small business owners or the farmers, hearing them firsthand, make sure that this policy that I am working for is really of for and by the people of the state of Wisconsin.
And so I guess that to end there, because as you said, at the pace we're going, it's likely going to become legal federally before we legalize it in this state. And so does that kind of get at the heart of why it's still so important to do this, is just to continue to beat the drum to show how popular this is, to not roll over, to not just throw your arms in the air. I was like, well, we can't do anything because the Republicans have control of the legislature. So until they move, we might as well just try to work on stuff that actually might happen. Like, what is, in the minute that we have left, why is it so important that even if it's feels like it falls on deaf ears, to keep banging this drum?
Wisconsin's an island of prohibition, with Minnesota just legalizing. The governor is set to sign it next week. Illinois and Michigan have legalized. We know that this is highly popular in the state of Wisconsin. The people of Wisconsin deserve to be heard, and I hear them. And they deserve to have a forum to share their dreams, their thoughts, and their concerns about this policy, to make sure it is drafted in the best way possible for all of us. I very much believe that the people of Wisconsin are my bosses, and I look forward to every single one of these conversations with our friends and neighbors. And I'm not going to end until this is actually the law of the land.
Well, we appreciate your work and your fight, Senate Democratic Leader Mellisa Agard. We can't wait to hear your progress, and good luck in the Capitol, because we know it's always spicy there. Great having you.
Peace out.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Sitting downtown in a railway station, one drove over the line. Down in a railway station, one drove over the line.
Real Chili's been serving up mouth-watering goodness to the people of Milwaukee since 1931. Their famous secret award-winning chili recipe is the same as it was back then, and a local treasure. From lunch to dinner to late-night breakfast, Real Chili has you covered. And now you can bring the Real Chili to your next party, tailgate, wedding, or office gathering with their unbeatable catering options. And don't forget about their Real Love Party Packs, perfect for small groups, and pick up from their 2 convenient locations, downtown Milwaukee and near Marquette University campus. Visit them at realchili.com. That's realchili.com.
From the kennel to the coop, whatever the season, Fleet Farm has everything to keep your animals happy and healthy. From training your pup to sit season, to mastering those retrieval skills season. From clipping your horse for competition season, to keeping the backyard birds well-fed season. And of course, loving your pets like family season. There's a reason people say, if Fleet Farm doesn't have it, you don't need it. Because we have it all. Fleet Farm, built for real life.
This is the story of a very special woman. Just a few knew about her superpowers. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times this afternoon, with daytime highs approaching 79. Southeasterly winds 5 to 10 miles an hour. Partly cloudy skies tonight, lows around 52. 82 tomorrow, mainly clear skies. Dry and turning much cooler Wednesday and Thursday, with highs in the low 60s. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 73 degrees.
So a story, depending on how you read this, I feel like this is either a redemption story or a horror thriller, because a traumatized orca called White Gladys may be behind the rise in killer whale attacks on boats in the Atlantic Ocean, scientists believe.
This is crazy.
So you have to remember, whales are mammals,
not sharks.
Not sharks. Killer whales are very smart. Dolphins, very smart.
Yes.
So while most orca interactions with boats are harmless, there's been a spike in aggressive behavior towards boats since 2020, biologist Alfredo Lopez Fernandez told Live Science. As Insider recently reported, there have been 3 cases of distinctive black and white creatures sinking vessels by ramming into them.
Yep.
So it seems like orcas may be imitating this aggressive behavior from other killer whales, with Lopez Fernandez saying that one female named White Gladys could be the culprit. So experts believe White Gladys may have had a critical moment of agony, such as colliding with a boat or being trapped during illegal fishing, Live Science reported. This event may have traumatized her and caused her to start ramming other boats.
Not going to happen to me again.
And so is it bad that there's a part of me that's kind of like, all right, White Gladys, like after you got traumatized, like I get it. Like I get it. And you're like, oh, not again. We're not doing this again. You're going down. I like, you taught myself how to ruin your boat. And now I'm going to teach my friends.
Exactly.
So stay out of here.
And my friends' kids. And I have a little clip from Australian television, also speaking to a marine mammal expert.
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Orcas attacking boats. People have literally seen this happening over the last 2 years. This has been documented a lot more frequently than one would think.
Well, do they know what the boats are, or do they think that there's something else? Are they actually innocent in this, or are they conniving?
Well, I would say that they definitely know what they're doing. And researchers have published a preliminary study just showing that they're attacking more sailboats than motorized boats. So if you're a sailor out there, sorry. And if your boat is around 12 meters on average, well, a killer whale in that area is likely to come for you.
Is it fair to call them conniving? I think that's an unfair assignment.
Scripture?
Yes.
Calculated?
Intelligent.
Intentional?
Intentional.
Intentional. They have purpose.
Yes, in doing
this. This isn't an accident. They're like, oh, ran into the boat. Sorry about that. Let me go on my way. This is
intentional.
I am trying. Because you think about it every once. There was one video last week that was terrifying. There was like a motorized kayak or something, and they had a GoPro or some kind of video, and a big I want to say
big butt shark.
Big butt shark came in, and they think the whale, the shark probably thought it was a seal, because as the way that, like, same thing with surfboards, often from the they look like a
could be
oblong looking seal. Yeah. But this video of this shark that comes out of the water and tries to take a bite out of the kayak, and like shockingly the kayak didn't flip over,
which is amazing.
But that seems like, oh, I was trying to eat you because I thought you were a seal, and then he left him alone when he realized he wasn't, versus orca, who sees the boat and is potentially intentionally saying, I'm going to F your boat up.
Because of what happened to me.
And so if this keeps happening, what protections do the orcas have, do you think? Because, I mean, it's international waters, right? If this is just in the Atlantic Ocean.
Well, I believe it's happening primarily in the Strait of Gibraltar. So I don't know, but those are still right? Those are still international waters. So I don't know.
Because, I feel like so often when it comes to wildlife, there's this push and pull, when we think about when there is coyotes or there's, the different wildlife that gets into. Did you see that I saw on Reddit, there was 2 deers just walking down downtown Milwaukee this weekend.
Are you seriously?
Yeah, I'll send you the picture. Literally like downtown Milwaukee, 2 deer, like 2 does. And so it says a lot for our nightlife.
Yeah.
How busy downtown Milwaukee is on a Saturday night, that 2 deer just like chilling, not scared, just walking down Wisconsin Ave. But you know what I mean? As far as the protections that go into sometimes euthanizing bears because they're in campgrounds or whatever.
And they keep going back.
And they keep going back. And so, like, in this situation, like, if the orcas keep flipping boats, who's going to call for, I don't know, doing something about the orcas so that boats can do their thing versus the protection of the orcas to say, like, boat at your own risk?
Well, isn't it already pretty much boat at your own risk?
I guess that's maybe, is that part of like the inherent adventure of boating? Is that a wave may come and just capture you and then
can be
goodbye.
sharks. There can be. And Google says all killer whale populations are protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act.
So you're just SOL, I guess. Take boat at your own risk.
Get a bigger boat. Because if they're, and I find meters very confusing. A 12-meter long boat, I don't quite have the vision of what that means.
It's like
if it's 30 feet, I have a better idea of how big that is.
I think that's about similar. Isn't there 3 feet in a meter?
You're asking me.
I always forget how close a yard versus a meter is because they're basically about the same. Yeah. I wish we would have been taught the metric system.
12 meters is 13 yards.
12 meters. See, they're very close.
They are pretty close.
Anyways. All right. Well, I'm Team Orca on this one, mostly because I don't go boating in the Atlantic very often. So this is not my problem. And go White Gladys.
Can you imagine just how terrifying that must be?
Oh, to be on the boat when it's
to be
happening?
on the boat
Terrifying.
when you're getting rammed. And as far as I know, while the boats have sunk, everybody's made it back to a shore. So it's not like she rams your boat and then you sink and then you're floating there as she swims around taunting you.
I know. Too bad there's a writer's strike right now because the White Gladys revenge thriller could be excellent.
Someone's working on that already in their time off.
Someone's already plugging it into AI to see if they can.
You bet. Come up with a script. Let's get this into production.
All right. When we come back, we are going to talk to Laura Bray, who is the Vice President of College Advancement and External Communications and the Executive Director of the MATC Foundation, about Milwaukee's leaky pipeline to higher education and what all of the local higher education institutions are doing to work together to try to fix it. So stick around. This is As Goes Wisconsin.